world is that Blake Lively can't handle things that are said bad about her. And the truth is, if you don't have thick skin, you're screwed. And Blake Lively's screwed, because clearly her skin is not thick. And her mom always called her and said, life is like a bowl of cherries.
Remember the Blake Lively lawsuit? It's always nice to refresh and go back to the basis for her lawsuit against Baldoni. Her lawsuit claims that she suffered emotional distress and pain, and humiliation, embarrassment, belittlement, frustration, and mental anguish. I mean, when you read all those things back to back in a row, it's just such a... Really? You experienced belittlement? Did Justin Baldoni belittle you? Justin Baldoni went out of his way to cater to you. Every one of your bad ideas, he would fall over himself and say, oh, thank you for this wonderful contribution you're making, Blake, to our incredible movie.
Justin Baldoni has been hit with another lawsuit, and this one is already making his world collapse. But that's not all. It's directly tied to the chaos surrounding Blake Lively. The same scandal that's been poisoning reputations and pulling careers apart. This isn't some minor legal headache. This is the kind of case that drags every hidden detail into the light. The accusations are sharp, the paperwork is already public, and the timing couldn't be worse for him. For months, Baldoni has tried to play the calm, collected figure in the middle of the Blake disaster, but this lawsuit shreds that image. It paints him as manipulative, reckless, and willing to cross lines just to protect the very people pulling him down. Now the legal fire is spreading fast, and Baldoni is running out of places to hide. His polished Hollywood persona, it's cracking in real time. And the deeper we dig into what's actually in this filing, the clearer it gets. This could be the case that destroys him for good. Justin Baldoni's legal team is scrambling to get ahead of the Blake Lively lawsuit, and the way they're moving right now says everything. Here's where the mask falls off. Before we even touch the brand new case against him, his lawyers have already fired back at Blake's latest demand. She wants the court to strip away the confidentiality labels on certain documents connected to PR firm tags responses. Why? Because Blake believes those documents could prove that Justin, along with Jamie Heath, Steve Sorowitz, and PR executive Jennifer Abel, were all part of a secret smear campaign to drag her through the media mud. It's the kind of accusation that would destroy reputations overnight. But Justin's team is fighting to keep that door closed, because once it opens, there's no telling what else comes out.
First, it does not mean that the judge believes Blake Lively's side of the story and doesn't believe Justin Baldoni's. Also, it does not mean that she has won her lawsuit against him, but that could still be dismissed by the judge. It does mean, though, that he can no longer pursue this $400 million that he claims he is owed by Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, their PR firm, and the $250 million he claims the New York Times owed him for maliciously spreading lies about him. It's not because the judge is saying, well, they weren't lies. It actually means even if they are all lies, and even if Baldoni is telling the truth, they still don't meet the standard of defamation that would require all those other people to pay him money. First, the judge said that any lies that Blake may have told were solely contained in her lawsuit. And in this country, you cannot be sued for defamation for what you allege in a lawsuit. This is meant generally to encourage victims to speak freely. Next, Baldoni claimed that Ryan Reynolds called him a predator and that really hurt his livelihood. But the judge says because the New York Times, Ryan Reynolds, etc. were all basing their statements on Blake Lively's lawsuit, it doesn't seem like they knew it was a lie that they were spreading. So note, this is regardless of whether or not it actually is a lie.
But then everything changed. In their official response, Justin's lawyers painted a completely different picture. They claimed Blake's backlash was entirely self-inflicted, insisting they had no part in orchestrating any attack. According to them, the recent backlash Blake has faced has nothing to do with Justin, his business partners, or anyone connected to Wayfarer Studios. They even went as far as to suggest that Blake is trying to twist unrelated events into part of her legal war against them. By framing it this way, Justin's team is clearly trying to push the idea that Blake is grasping at straws, a move that feels less like confidence and more like desperation. But things were about to explode. Blake's legal filings revealed that she's been sending subpoenas to some of the biggest platforms in the world, Google, TikTok, and X, demanding information about creators who've spoken about her online. This isn't just about her feud with Justin anymore, it's about silencing voices that have kept her name in headlines. For Justin's team, this was the perfect point to hammer home their defense. They argued that Jennifer Abel's PR firm wasn't even brought in until after the backlash had already erupted, meaning they couldn't have been the masterminds behind it. On paper, that sounds like a clean alibi, but the timing raises more questions than it answers. And that's when the tables turned. Even while firmly denying that any smear campaign ever existed, Jennifer and her PR team suddenly agreed to declassify the documents Blake wanted. It was a move framed as an effort to avoid further conflict, but the sudden change of heart doesn't exactly scream confidence. If there was nothing to hide, why fight it in the first place? The decision puts Justin's side in a strange position. They've now handed over exactly what Blake was after, but not without first trying to block her at every turn. It's a back and forth that makes them look more cornered than calm.
But unfortunately, her mom never told her life is like a bowl of sometimes shitty cherries. And like, not all cherries are going to be sweet. And I don't understand, because cherries, sometimes they're not so good. And sometimes they taste bad. But her mom didn't prepare her for that, because everything I've ever heard about Willie McLean, Elaine McAlpin, Elaine Lively, whatever the hell her 17 names are, is that this is a woman who taught her daughter to never hear the word no. And as a mother, always tried really hard to instill in my kids. And I'm not perfect. I've definitely not been perfect at this. And I think I've done better with my second kid than my first. Is I've always tried to teach my kids that you cannot get everything that you want. And you will sometimes go to bed upset with me. And many times you will be very angry with me, and I'm not your best friend. And you will also not really like sometimes what your friends do to you. And you will not like what your teachers do to you. And if you don't get good grades, and if you don't act well at play dates, and if you don't act nice at baseball practice or at your theater class or whatever the hell you're doing, like, things will be taken away from you, because you don't get to act like a bitch or a prick or whatever and get whatever you want. But I don't think that Blake Lively got that lesson growing up. And I'm saying this like, truly, she's screwed, because from here on out, she will always go after the person that she sees as being mean to her, as being unfair to her. On Gossip Girl, it was the makeup artist, it was the extras, it was the PAs. We've heard down so many stories of this. It was actors that have worked with her before. It was the different people on the crew that have worked with her before. It was people that have worked with her in her business before. And then on It Ends With Us, of course, it was the ADs that she didn't like. Then it was Justin that she didn't like, and obviously Jamie that she didn't like. And then, of course, over on this process now it's Brian Friedman that she didn't like, because if you're not nice to Blake, if you don't give her exactly what you want, you're out. Which is why these attorneys, I'm convinced, are literally doing every single thing that she's asking for, even if it's making them look absolutely insane, because they won't do anything to ruin the ability to pay for their kids' Ivy League education, which she's bankrolling. If they say no to her, if they say this doesn't seem like the right move, they're out. She's only surrounded by yes people, because if you say no to her, you're out. That's the truth. I'm almost 100% certain that this is a personality disorder where you cannot say no to someone like her unless you want to be deemed not part of her life anymore. And if you're on her payroll, you're effed.
The drama only gets deeper. In that same legal letter, Justin's team pleaded for Blake to stop calling the campaign untraceable. The choice of words is telling. They want to control not just the legal outcome, but the public narrative. Every line in that response reads like a balancing act between denial and damage control. On one hand, they're trying to project strength. On the other, they're making quiet concessions that could hand Blake the upper hand. And as this war of words plays out in court filings, the bigger truth is becoming impossible to ignore. Justin Baldoni isn't just in the middle of Blake Lively's storm anymore. He's now standing in the direct path of it. Justin Baldoni's lawyers didn't hold back in their written response, and the tone is sharp. Here's where the truth hits hard. They say Blake's entire case hinges on the claim that the Wayfarer Group has been running some secret smear campaign, manipulating the worldwide media with untraceable sources to make her look like the villain. But they argue that calling it untraceable is absurd, especially when Blake already knows exactly which articles and authors she's upset about. To them, her choice of words isn't just wrong, it's a deliberate way to justify dragging the court into her hunt for a conspiracy they say doesn't exist. But things were about to explode.
The Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni case is another one. Again, Justin Baldoni is Jewish, obviously. So is Steve Sarowitz. I'm like the worst anti-Semite ever. Here I am defending these people. But it's the same thing. She went to the press and tried to smear this man and ruin his existence by claiming, in so many words, that he had sexually harassed her. And she made him sound, with the help of the New York Times, like he was an absolute creep, a pervert, a sex-addicted pervert. If you read that article, you took away that Justin Baldoni was a sex-addicted pervert, right? And poor Blake Lively had to survive doing a movie with him. If Brian Friedman had not done what he had done and published the entire, he said he had nothing to hide, every text message sent between Blake and Justin and Ryan Reynolds, the world would have believed what she and the New York Times had worked on. it's a shocking case. People are going, oh, it's just like celebrity drama. No, this isn't celebrity drama. This is so much deeper than that. Okay. We are talking about the corruption of the media who has the trust of the people. Like, you're an educated person. You read the New York Times, right? The New York Times essentially assisted in a hit on a man. For what reason? What did Blake actually want from Justin Baldoni? Publishing rights. And we got to read her messages, and she wanted to be put on the film, and she wanted to be put as a producer, executive producer, or else, right? You do this or else, threatening. So I'm not going to come back. Here are my demands. I mean, a total witch. Truly, that woman is possessed. I cannot, after reading those messages and Justin falling over himself because he was like, she's an A-lister, just to, he was almost like pathetic, like stand up for yourself at a certain point. And what's happening right now, like in the court system in New York, they're allowing her to, I don't know, like it just seems like it's a very corrupt case. But what happened to Justin Baldoni, everyone should be reading those messages and realizing what the New York Times took part in, because we're seeing this happen over and over again, where the media, like the journalists, are acting like assassins, right? These are assassins. These are assassinations, right? You're going to hit someone. You're going to hit their entire career.
They're called hit pieces.
Now here's where it gets insane. That's why they say Tag's list of names includes people they harmlessly gave quotes to from Wayfarer's lawyers. Quotes responding to media requests about legal developments, which they point out is exactly what Blake's own team has done repeatedly. To Justin's camp, this isn't proof of a smear. It's standard PR in a high-profile legal battle. They frame it as the normal back and forth of public statements, not some shadowy plot. This is where it all falls apart. In their closing line, Justin's lawyers flatly state that Blake will not uncover any nefarious efforts by Wayfarer to convince anyone she's guilty or innocent of anything. They insist Tag never contacted content creators about the case at all. By ending on that point, they're trying to slam the door shut on one of Blake's most damaging accusations. But whether the court buys it is another story, and this fight is only heating up from here. Justin Baldoni's legal team is doubling down, pointing the finger right back at Blake Lively, and they're not pulling any punches. Here's where the truth hits hard. In their letter, they claim the real reason Blake is facing so much backlash is her own doing, specifically those aggressive subpoenas she sent to Google, TikTok, and X. They say she wasn't just targeting commentary channels. She went after everyday people who only post casually online. And according to them, that's what turned the tide against her, not anything orchestrated by Wayfarer or Tag. But things were about to explode. Justin's side laid out 3 key points. First, they argue that the interrogatory responses Blake is so focused on are only reviewable by lawyers, meaning they couldn't possibly be shaping public opinion. Second, they say the real backlash came after she demanded phone numbers, financial records, and private account info from platforms, a move one outlet described as a PR disaster. And third, of all the names Blake flagged, only one was even tied to her subpoenas. To them, that proves her entire motion is irrelevant to the mess they insist she created herself. And it gets even messier. They claim that if Blake's team had just kept talking with them privately instead of filing this motion, none of this would have blown up in court. They point out the motion doesn't cite any real legal authority for stripping the confidentiality from the interrogatory responses. In their words, the only purpose of the filing is to wrongfully dump the blame for her public backlash onto Tag and the other Wayfarer parties. Translation? Justin's camp says this is all Blake's mess, and she's the one keeping it in the headlines. But then came the bombshell. This legal battle isn't Justin's only problem, because now his own insurance company, Harco National Insurance, has turned against him. They filed a lawsuit against both him and Wayfarer Studios, claiming they have no obligation to cover his legal costs in the fight with Blake. If they win, Justin could be paying every cent of his defense out of pocket. Harco's position, Wayfarer knew about at least one internal complaint but failed to tell them, which could have changed whether they issued the policy at all. The real chaos starts here. Harco says Blake's harassment allegations involve incidents from April to June 2023, months before their policies took effect in July 2023. They also claim Wayfarer withheld critical information, pointing to a November 2023 email from Blake's lawyers, and more allegations raised in January 2024. Yet when Wayfarer applied to renew the policy in July 2024, they stated there were no known claims or potential claims in the past year. That's a direct violation, according to Harco's attorney, Evan Shapiro. If the court sides with Harco and voids coverage, Justin and Wayfarer could be staring down a 6-figure legal bill with no safety net. This case is already expensive, and without insurance, money could become the deciding factor, forcing a settlement neither side wants. But for now, the war continues, and Justin is fighting battles on every front.